So I started playing Hearthstone in closed beta. No, scratch that. I started playing Hearthstone before closed beta. Or rather, before I got a key to closed beta. In the before time when this song perfectly encapsulated what it was like to be me.
Please God that I have been wrong, or what this blizzard want me to do. If I would meet a fairy, I would wish to let me into Hearthstone just like this.
I had actually printed out paper Hearthstone cards to go and play with Kara. We were that excited for the release of the game. And I was that excited for many reasons. The first being that I'd really enjoyed TCGs in the past, things like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And that Blizzard was making it. And behind Blizzard was not only a great company that only puts out a really good polished product, but a fantastic lore and history and characters that if you put them on a card, you feel an immediate attachment to. And the more I learned about the game, and the design team, and the effort they put into it to create a tactile experience, made me think these are people who really played card games themselves. It's impossible to pick up a Magic card without feeling attached to the physicality of it, the sensation of touching it, or having it in the sleeve, but having it in your hand. And they tried to capture that with things like the Hearthstone box, which has dimension, and inside lays your Hearthstone collection. But most of all, if there's one reason that I was excited, truly excited for this game, before I ever got my hands on it for real, it was because I knew this game would connect me to competition. And in the past when I played trading card games, that was the biggest flaw. I could understand the game and get as good as my surrounding opponents, but I didn't have access to that many opponents. And by being online and being a game that I knew was going to connect me to millions of other players, easily at my fingertips, I knew that I would be able to get very good. It did all these things and paved the way for other great games, like many other card games. And if you ask me, we're in a renaissance of card and board games right now. There are a ton of great collectible card games, trading card games, board games. Everything is coming out now, and it's just like this wonderful reblossoming of everything I loved about sitting down and playing cards or playing a board game with someone. In recent years, I've played games like Star Realms and Ascension, Dominion and Shadowverse, Soulforge and new translations of Magic, and where all of these games have their pros and cons. Some of those were deck builders, which is a type of game not everyone's familiar with, where you build your deck as you go. The idea is to make the most efficient deck, while others are more traditional card games, where your objective is to kill other monsters to clear the board or to kill your opponent. But none of them could usurp the position that Hearthstone had in my heart. Basically, they were all missing something. Whether it was a rich lore behind the cards, like in Elder Scrolls Online, who cares about a card called Nimble Ally? Or in its translation to digital, like Magic the Gathering. None of these did it as well as Hearthstone. Enter Gwent, a game that I started playing because of LifeCoach, but that I kept on playing for its depth and unapologetic difficulty. In an era of Hearthstone where many people are discontented with the way that the meta has developed, where playing on curve is the way to win and not drawing the right card is the way to lose, here you have a game that starts out by letting you draw 10 cards and then mulliganing 3, letting you see 13 cards before the match begins. 13 cards out of a 25 card deck. That means if you use all 3 mulligans, you get to see 52% of your deck in your opening hand. And you get to keep in your hand 40% of your deck. Now in Gwent, things aren't played on or off curve. There is no curve. You play cards in the best possible order. But Gwent's got another thing that makes it a bit of a unique game. You only have to win 2 out of 3 rounds. So most decks revolve around a strategy of winning a round, then causing your opponent to play as many cards as possible in the second round in order to guarantee their victory, because if they lose there, they lose the game, and then beating them out in the third round. Card advantage is super important in Gwent. And if you decide to pass your turn, that's the last card you can play. They can play the rest of their hand out if they wanted to, so passing early when you're behind is no longer an option. It becomes blatantly obvious after playing your first 2 or 3 games just how important every small decision is in this game. From the cards you put into your deck, to how they synergize together, to your mulligan. The mulligan is incredibly complex and interesting, and sometimes it's actually right to not take your last mulligan for fear of drawing a card you don't want in your hand. Things that don't exist in Hearthstone, like deck thinning to make your deck more efficient, that makes the game feel more like a deck builder than a traditional monsters fighting monsters game. And then there's the win condition. Gwent's win condition is victory points. You have to have more power on the board than your opponent. This is really different than other games, and where certainly situations similar to Hearthstone will arise where the opponent has the perfect hand and plays it well, and you have a hand that is suboptimal, and he sort of wins because of what he drawed, that's going to happen a whole lot less often. Games are usually won and lost based on decisions, based on small mistakes, and up to everything except for very high MMR. I've found most of the time that I lost, or most of the time that my opponent beat me, it was because maybe I could have done something better. And sure, I'm new to the game. I make plenty of mistakes. But part of the reason that I can make so many mistakes is because of the depth built into the game. Take the card Scorch, for example. This is one of the first really good silvers that I think you get for free, if I remember right. Scorch reads, destroy the strongest non-gold unit, parentheses, S, units, on the battlefield. So the first time you play this card, especially after coming from Hearthstone, you're going to be thinking, oh, so this removes the strongest, unit on my enemy's side. And then you play the card, and maybe you scorch something off your side of the battlefield. Or maybe you scorch 2 of the highest units off your side of the battlefield. Or off of your opponent's. And you may think, wow, I didn't know it hit more than one thing. Or wow, I didn't realize it hit both sides of the battlefield. And it's cards like this that I think are paradigmatic of the design of the whole game. The game is unapologetically hard. It's a game where strategy and playing your strategy right and filtering out all the mistakes over time are going to make you a better player, where large win rates are possible because decks are consistent. And the more I play and the more I get used to different decks and different mechanics, the more I want to play more. But that wouldn't be enough to get me to invest money to buy some cards to actually start playing the game. What did it for me was realizing that this is the first game since Hearthstone coming out. It has an appreciation for the tactile feel of cards. They give cards depth. They have a 3D nature to them. Like Hearthstone, they've got full-on animations in the cards, some of which are beautiful full scenes. Look here at Vilgefortz melting the face off of Regis. And Witcher, for anyone who's played the Amazing game series, or maybe read the books, knows that Witcher has an amazing lore behind it. There's plenty of characters, even the minor characters in the story that you really care about, that if you got them on a card, you would be excited to have them in your hand because you know something about them. I can't stress enough how important it is to feel an association to the cards that you're playing. Then I considered the history of Gwent, realizing that Gwent was a thing back in Witcher 3. So all of us in closed beta right now are really experiencing the second iteration of this card game. And that's not even taking into account all the changes that happen throughout closed beta. It feels refined. It feels really well balanced. Where there is a consensus about certain cards' worth, it doesn't feel like anything is worthless. And you honestly can't say that about games like Hearthstone. I'm not saying this game has usurped the position that Hearthstone has in my heart, but I am saying I'm considering a polyamorous relationship. Hey guys, Saga here, and I guess this is kind of my way of telling you I'm going to be making Gwent content in the future. As you can tell, I'm very excited about the game, and I figured this could serve as an introduction. And if you're one in the audience who's wondering how do I start playing Gwent, there are actually plenty of beta key giveaways going on where I was able to find a key within like 5 minutes. And I've been told that if you can't find a key, you can actually buy one for $1 from 1 or 2 sites. My name's Six Saga. I make Gwent and Overwatch content. I have some series on For Honor and Appreciating Gaming and all kinds of things. So if that sounds cool to you, please subscribe. And if you haven't seen it already, check out Appreciating Gaming episode 2 over here. And if you haven't seen my first short film on PewDiePie's Tuber Simulator, you gotta check that out over here. Oh, and click on the kitten in the middle if you'd like to support me on Patreon. See you next time.